I'm Shane Hammett. I'm the Vice President for IT and Cybersecurity for a defense contractor called ITSC Secure Solutions.
Question number 2, what's the best thing about being a cyber professional?
Oh, there's so many good things. I'd probably land on being able to translate tech speak into for the non-technical individual, especially when you get into classrooms or someone that's interested in considering that as a career field. I call it being the catalyst for inspiration and innovation. I mean, if I could just wrap a bow around it, man, that's it right there. I love to inspire and I love to bring innovation, and you can do all of that in the cyber profession. So.
Question number 3, cybersecurity is a top concern. That's what we're hearing. That's what it's in the news. It's everywhere. What does that mean to you?
Well, if I could just kind of put it in lay terms, it means we've got to do a better job of locking our digital doors, if you will. We've moved out of the days of Mayberry when it comes to the digital world, and now we've got to do a better job of locking our devices and making it part of everybody's daily habits. That's our problem right now, is that we've put the cyber experience, if you will, into a genre of a profession and not made it so homogenous to everyone in everyday lifestyle. And so as we work from home we're hopefully seeing more of that kind of permeating into the households. And so I'm excited to say that I think the trends I'm seeing, we are definitely getting better at that. But we've got to make it more of a habit for everyone. And I think we'll certainly move that direction over the next year or two.
So let me add a question here. What do you think we can do to train good habits?
Well, if you believe in some of the books that are out there, they say that if you do something repetitively for 2 weeks, it becomes a habit, right? So if you kind of follow that mindset, if you could get individuals to practice good habits, whether it's email, whether it's clickbait kind of stuff, whatever it might be, if we could get in those habits of making sure that, number one, we understand what is basic cybersecurity, and then number 2, how do we continuously repeat those processes over and over again. And I think that a lot of companies are doing a good job of putting some tools in place that's doing the evaluations and targeting those weaker employees. And I think that's a good practice that everyone should be adopting.
Number 4, what insight do you want to share with other experts?
Yeah, I think that this one is something that can be a little bit controversial, what I'm going to say, and hopefully it's going to start some additional follow-on conversations with you and others on your podcast. And it's simply that I don't believe that cybersecurity should ever be regulated, or it should never be a compliance check, if you will. We've got to flip the script a little bit and view cybersecurity, just as I mentioned a minute ago. It has to become a best practice. It has to be part of our everyday behaviors. And if we move that mindset towards that direction, it's almost like if you were building a house, right? You would want the most up-to-date best practices when your builder is building your house or your car or whatever it might be. We've got to do the same thing as we're building code, or we're building applications, or we're building websites, or whatever it may be. When it touches those digital devices, we've got to have that same type of mindset throughout that supply chain. That it's just best practice and common sense, if you will. It's locking those digital doors.
That. So let's pull that thread a little bit. I agree. Your foundation in cybersecurity should be what your home is built on, right? It's got to be a strong foundation. It's got to be able to last. But how do we move away from the trend that looks like it's going to be more compliance, more regulatory than less, and still have that as a best practice?
Well, it's twofold. One is we've got to push that, encourage that in our supply chain, from the hardware makers and the software makers both. We've got to make sure that they understand to not let the chasing the dollar outweigh implementing proper security throughout that development process, whatever it may be. And I think if we move that direction in as a consumer, not just a cyber professional, but all consumers should be having that same mindset. When we're doing our reviews and our evaluations of products and devices, we should mention those kinds of things, that it's known to have flaws because of X, Y, and Z, and call them out on that. So that's going to raise the bar for those manufacturers of those products. The second piece of that is we've got to continue to do a better job of that and demand that in our own households, and not be so lax and just wait on the software companies to do their job. Read those underlying policies that says that this application is taking all of your data and sending it off to a marketing company, and then in turn you get all of these spam emails and everything else. There are ways of protecting yourself from those things, and a lot of times it's just because out of the box you've got default settings that don't have these protections enabled, and it's we've got to do a better job of communicating what those things are, and so that anyone can implement those things. I would argue that many of us have smart TVs in our house, and when was the last time we did a system update on them, right? That's a perfect example. Why can we not out of the box enable that so that it does auto updates? And I mean, those are just some small things that we can do, but if we do that across the board, we're further hardening our digital footprint, thus reducing the risk posture.
I'm noticing that compliance is outdated. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I got to give some props to the DoD for trying to implement CMMC, or push that direction, because defense contractors were lax. We were not practicing best practice when it comes to cybersecurity. There's a cost factor associated, or a perceived cost factor associated with that. As I just mentioned, a lot of the security controls are there, we just don't have them enabled. And so if we would start with just enabling what we already have access to, I think that's going to certainly give us a much stronger risk posture. And then we can look at those additional defenses that we would have to apply to kind of get into that type of environment. But I think that we've just got to look at it from a best practice perspective, and not so much from a regulatory. We should not be waiting on government to tell us how to do best practice when it comes to cyber. In many cases, we as the commercial industry are already building those best practices. The NIST guidelines are simply there as a reference guide, that we in the industry use a lot of. But we should be pushing the boundaries even beyond that. If we've identified a new defense mechanism because of some kind of vulnerability that we've adopted, publish it, send it out. Don't wait on this to adopt it. Let all of your colleagues in the industry know about it. We're living in our box too much when it comes to the cyber world. And so I think that's where a lot of the nonprofits could really help industry a lot, is as they're made aware of these kinds of things, why not publish these things, get them out there into the public, so that everyone can evaluate that as if it were needed in their industry or not.
Perfect. All right, last question. This is the fun question. What retro piece of technology just simply makes you smile?
Well, it's really how I decompress. I got to land on the forge, man, the blacksmithing forge. We've seen the uptick of a lot of people doing blacksmith work because of the Forged in Fire show that's on, and but it really changed the world that we live in. It gave us the ability to put a wagon behind a horse and travel without having to walk. It really changed the way we have handheld tools. It gave us digging devices. There's so many things that it enabled us to do much better, much faster, in a much more robust way. And so, I think that those are those really cool things that really set things in motion that we just tend to forget about.
Shane, This was awesome. Thank you so much for being on, everyone. You did it 6 questions-ish in 9 minutes. And And we look forward to having other folks on the podcast. Check us out. Shane, have a great day.
Thank you, Rick.